the first movie that I've directed, and it was a super modest movie, very small team, very, very tight budgets, but it was pretty ambitious, and so I wanted to share some of our tactics in terms of how I did this. And to start it off, this is exciting. I'm going to play the trailer for it, and this is actually the first time I have played the trailer for it for people.
I have to say, everyone has been very welcoming since I arrived here. It makes me feel at home.
Where is your mother and father?
The fever took them to heaven. I need a job, ma'am.
Do you know what kind of work we do here?
You're Marie. You can help me. You're famous.
My grandmother is famous. I just have her famous name.
Voodoo and alchemy. We should be rivals, shouldn't we?
I don't see why.
Even when things feel hopeless, a ray of light shines for you
When we least expect it.
2 deaths. Both linked to you, Marie.
A madman is on the loose, and these officers refuse to help us.
We can't give these names to the police, so we'll have to figure it out for ourselves.
Everyone who takes part is a part of darkness. They will be changed. There's an eternal cost.
You decide who lives and who dies.
Yes, I decide.
First off, workflow-wise, we were in an Adobe workspace. This was my timeline for the movie. It got a little crazy, so this is the whole movie in one thing. All of the visual effects in the movie were done in After Effects and embedded in the timeline as live comps, which seemed like a really good idea on paper, and I'd probably do it again, but it got problematic. And then audio-wise, what we were doing here was I was actually doing a little bit more dialogue editing and sound effects design maybe in the timeline than most people would do. And my goal of that was to push back picture lock, essentially. We did a few focus groups with the movie so that we could get some meaningful feedback, and I think that's incredibly important when you dive into something like this and you get so lost in the details. But when you're focus grouping something, I think it's really important to have passable sounding dialogue and a passable experience that feels like the whole thing. And using this kind of a workflow where I did as much as possible sort of stubbornly in the timeline, just as one big timeline, I think allowed us to kind of delay picture lock. And then once I picture locked, we picture locked for good. We had already done 3.5 focus groups, and that was it. The downside of doing this Premiere workflow is that it crashed, and then it crashed again, and then it crashed again, and then it... I personally put all of my visual effects into 2 categories. The category of people aren't really going to be looking for it, so I can get away with it very easily, or the category of, ugh, that's the latter category. So what am I talking about? What am I talking about? People aren't looking for it. So you're probably not looking for a visual effect here. Is that safe to say? Except that I'm giving a presentation asking you where the visual effect is. So that's a cheat. Well, to give you a hint, we wanted these bodies laying around in the streets in a whole bunch of the shots. We failed to do that on set. So my dear wife here, who wrote the movie, went down to Michael's. These are actually those bodies right there that are laying in the streets. And it was a Michael Arts and Crafts project. There's the original shot without them, right? So bodies, no bodies, cool. So let's look at one more here. This is a little clip from the movie. Okay, who saw it? Where's the visual effect? So this will probably explain where the visual effect was. So we didn't have enough extras, we didn't have enough period clothes. Thing is, this effect wouldn't hold up if you were looking for it. You'd scrutinize it and you'd see that there's a half dozen of me. But you're not looking for it. You just think it's, you know, you're not thinking like, oh, what is this effect here? So it works pretty well. In my world, I just do a sloppy job and move on. And then when I'm looking back at the big picture, I can say like, oh, hey, that spot needs a little bit of work, this spot needs a little bit of work, this spot needs a little work. And in the end, I end up doing like a quarter of the work that I would have done if I just tried to get everything right the first time. Because say you have a little green screen edge that, you know, you start doing it and it doesn't look right. Well, in the end, the composite turns out that that's his dark hair on a dark background or something, for example. And that edge doesn't matter at all. But you don't see that until you get further along in the process. And so you're early on in the process, making your life difficult instead of moving ahead. So I'm looking through these archival photographs, and I notice, hold on a second, there's something about these. See those smokestacks on the left? They're on the right there. This is a friggin' panorama that this dude shot 110 years ago. I'm going to be able to stitch this into a panorama. And then I can put it in my movie. There it is. You just have to be very disciplined when you start fiddling with, you know, the one little bit of noise in the corner of the shot and ask yourself, is somebody really going to see this? And if the answer is maybe, then you better start working on something else that they're really going to see. And then you can test audience a couple times. And this happened to me. Our last, it was actually not even a test audience, it was our cast and crew screening a couple weeks ago. And somebody said, hey, you know the one thing that I noticed? That security camera up in the corner. And I was like, yeah, I was hoping you would notice that. But now I know, and then I spent a few days, it was in like 20 different shots, and one of the sets we use like all the time. There's one of those little circular, it just looks like a little black dot up in the corner. I thought I could get away with it. I spent a few days painting it out. I'm very excited to actually share more than the trailer with an audience. So, thank you guys so much.